got around Mulgrew, you felt good. He made you feel. He just was. And like I said, he was a regular guy, but and there's some people he probably didn't care for if they were wrong, but he just had to think about it. He had this thing that he made everybody feel like he was their friend, He was just beautiful. He was just a beautiful guy. And he loved to play. And I'm sure there was a lot of piano players that was envious of him. But he was such a beautiful guy. He had a language. Nobody could like him. You know what I mean? You didn't want to not like him. Once you met him, he just laughed at him, or you laughed with him, or he was just a beautiful guy. This was my life with Mulgrew, and he was playing with him, and he got that job with Art Blake, and of course he contributed to Art band Franklin, and then he left Art, and he joined Tony Williams. But what really happened was, both played on Tony Williams' record, He Wanted Trees. And Tony Williams was trying to put together, I think Tony set out to put together, to be very honest. I think they blew it off from the record. And probably told him, if you just straight ahead record, we'll let you do an electric record. And Tony said fine, and they got Tony. They were trying to get Tony guys from the jazz message, like the jazz messages were going to leave Art and go up into Tony's stand. So that's why there's Mulgrew and Donald Harrison. And I think Terrence Blanchard was supposed to be on it, but Terrence didn't make it. And Tony wasn't so happy with it at first, but then I wanted to make the day. And I played different than Terrence. And when we got through submitting the record, a couple of weeks later, I got a call from Tony, and Tony said he wanted to build a band around me and Mulgrew. That's how that happened. And he basically called me to put the band together. And he explained to me that that's what his intention at first, but he liked the results of what he heard. So then me and Mulgrew became the focal point of Tony Williams Quintet. And from that point on, man, we just had a ball. From 1985 up until death, there was, and especially the years we were on the road together, because we were on the road 6 months out of the year. So, and then when we weren't on the road, we were in New York playing together, sitting in it, Mulgrew was playing with his band, and I played with them, and he played with my band, and we were making records together. So, those years, man, I never laughed so much. We both were striving for stuff. I mean, we both were believing that we had responsibility to try to be great, try to be what the level was that we had been inspired by. And we were serious about that. That was our life. That became a mile.
This is a little bit of the Tony Williams quintet with Mulgrew and Wallace Roney. That's the great vibraphonist Bobby Hutcherson playing also in that band. And it's interesting, one of the other things that people said about Mulgrew often that I heard was when you're playing in a jazz band, for the piano player, when you're not soloing, when you're backing up someone else who is soloing, what they call that is comping. You're comping behind, you're complementing the soloist. And what I heard was that, some piano players, they're just more worried about their own solos. And then when it comes time for the other people to solo, they're just kind of not all there. But what I heard from a lot of different people was when Mulgrew was playing behind them, when they were taking a solo, Mulgrew would take them someplace. He was totally into it. And they would finish their solos and they would go, wow, where did I just go? What was that? I mean, that's how into it Mulgrew was. And people really appreciated that about him. They did not take that for granted. That's a beautiful thing too. I want to play a little piece of Wallace Roney again. This is Wallace telling a kind of funny story about Mulgrew. About one time when he just said there was never anything to get mad at Mulgrew about, so he one time invented something.
As everybody knows, which is one of the blessings that from when God bestowed upon me to be able to hang with Miles. But when we hang with Miles, sometimes you start to take on his persona. Not a bad thing. I don't believe it's a bad thing because Miles, she was just too good. But Miles, I remember at one point Miles didn't let McCoy tie her. And I didn't work with McCoy. I mean, I love McCoy. But, I think something happened to me and McCoy. I interpreted that I had a bad feeling with McCoy, something happened. So when Miles started putting McCoy Tyner down, I put McCoy Tyner down too, because Miles did. I mean, there's something that took Miles man, And one day we were in an airplane in Mulgrew. We were talking about it. And of course, Mulgrew, that's his life. Oscar Peterson, McCoy Tyner, Herbie, and Wayne Kelly, I would say it's his items. And I mean, with strong emphasis on McCoy and his career. So we're talking about it, and I'm telling him McCoy, I'm saying everything Miles said. Now, I don't agree with it now. I don't agree with what Miles said. But back then, I was just echoing it. McCoy, all he does is play this. All he does is that. He bangs on the piano. He plays pentatonic. Even when he plays scales, it sounds like pentatonic. I was just saying all Miles stuff. And I was getting mad at Mulgrew because he wasn't, I don't know why I was getting mad. I really love McCoy. I was just getting mad, And I mean, you have to understand why I'm saying this. Because Mulgrew's such a beautiful guy, there ain't nothing to get mad at him about. So I had to fucking So I got mad at him. And we argued, and Mulgrew was so happy to pass to this. He didn't want to argue. He's like, well, it's okay. I don't agree with you. So the more he didn't agree with me, the more I took it belligerently. So that's not talking to him. I wouldn't talk to him. And Mulgrew would say, and this is my best friend. And we're arguing about something stupid like this. Well, I remember this went on for about a week. Every time Mulgrew, I'd see him, I'd put my shoulder. We'd be on the basement playing, I'd turn away from him. I don't know why. And again, the reason why this is important, because other than that, it was There's something really sad in Mulgrew about it. It's beautiful. So one day, Mulgrew knocked on my door, and I remember we had a day off, and I was trying to get some rest, and all the lights out. Yeah, I had all the lights out anyway, but I think when I saw it was him, I turned all the lights on purposely, and I ain't gonna be bothered with him. And Mulgrew walked right into my room. I mean, just walked right by me, like he was gonna dare me to sit down. And he's a beautiful guy. He ain't gonna never fight you. But I guess you figure, well, if you're gonna hit me, you're gonna have to hit me. You know, but we're just two good friends to go through this. And he sat in her room and went over my table. He just sat at my table. And it's pitch black. I won't cut on the light. I won't turn on the TV. I'll just sit there. He sat there for 3 hours. And me being as stubborn as I can, and so after a while, we moved to Southern Land. That's how we ended up the only argument I think I only had ever had with him. And he told the silliest jokes and the dumbest puns, but they don't make sense. Damn, he had a billion puns and jokes. So one day I said to Mulgrew,
Okay, that was the argument story about McCoy Turner. Now I'm gonna play another funny story. This is one about what Wallace Roney was starting to say about Mulgrew's jokes, and how he's gonna tell how one time he bet him all week's salary that he could not tell a joke for a whole week. And here's what happened.
he went on for the first day. I was waiting for the slip up saying, just like, anyway, he made it to the first day. He made it to the second day. He made it to the fourth day. He made it to the sixth day. The last day, he made it. He made it. He took my money. And the Mulgrew looked at me and said, wow. I got to tell you, you were so the best joke I ever Then he said, what? He said, man, I might have wondered, but y'all missed some of the best jokes I ever had. It was killing them.
This is some of Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. And about the time Mulgrew joined up, this is the album New York Scene, Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. This album won a Grammy Award. The first album that Mulgrew was on with the Messengers. And this is a song that Mulgrew composed called Falafel. have some people here that have been very important in Mulgrew's life. Well, a lot of people. But Mr. Albert Harrison is back there, Mulgrew's piano teacher, who I think deserves a round of applause. Thank you for being here, Mr. Harrison. Yeah, and little did I know when I called Mr. Harrison, I would also get Mulgrew's Sunday school teacher, Mrs. Harrison. So thank you so much for that. Yeah. And also, speaking of Mulgrew's education, there's a man back there in the doorway, Sir Henry Flout, who I just learned on this trip invited Mulgrew to play for a party when he was 15, and the director of music from Memphis State University, Tommy Ferguson, was in attendance at the party and heard Mulgrew play and pretty much offered him a full scholarship on the spot, is the way I understand the story.
You had to get out of high school first.
Mr. Flout, would you like to say anything?
Well, I would just say it's a real privilege to have known Mulgrew and what he's meant for this community. He's a real gentleman and very talented, very humble, and he has had fundraisers here in Greenwood and played at different things like that. So it's a real tribute to have known him personally and what he has meant to this community and the relationship he had with his family. And so we ought to be proud and put his statue up in some of these other places. Amen.
Thank you. I know there are other people here that have, Alfonso Sanders back here has played with Mulgrew, a friend of his for many years. Any of y'all that would like to come up and say something, please do. Because I would enjoy hearing what you have to say too. So whenever you feel like it, please do come up.
I have a rare recording I'd like to do. And I say rare because you can find it online now for about $300. And that's because they only made so many copies of it. But Bill Fielder introduced me to Mulgrew when I got to Mississippi Valley State. And I guess I never intended to come to, never intended to come to such a small place, leaving, Atlanta. And so when I met Mulgrew, Bill Fielder had reduced my trumpet playing down to one note because I couldn't play. He said, "No, you got to learn some other things, son." But when I met Mulgrew would come over in the summertime, and I would stay in the summer to try to study at Valley because I wouldn't go back. And Bill, at that time, introduced us. And Mulgrew would come up and sit in what we called a little theater, and he'd practice on. That was a grand piano there, and so Mulgrew would come over and practice on it in whatever spare time he had, and that's how I got introduced to Mulgrew. But he was so far ahead of me and what I was able to think about doing until I really didn't comprehend until some years later, and I got him back when I moved back to the Delta. And I was working a job at Delta State. And so Mulgrew and I have been talking for a while through some other veins. And I wrote a tune called Too Late, Too Soon. And so when Mulgrew came to the rehearsal, he never could play it. He said, every time he did, he said, "Man, I owe you some more notes right there." And I said, "Don't worry about it." And then he'll miss this. And then the bass player who was with me, a guy by the name of John Birdsong out of Nashville, he said, man, Mulgrew too late. Then they said, "No, Mulgrew too soon." So he made fun about it. But then that night, Mulgrew had processed all that, right? And he played the tune like he wrote it, and I was standing there like going, like, I really don't understand what happened. But that's the kind of guy Mulgrew was. He was very intuitive about music. You never knew where his mind was going, but he was always ready to make music sound his best, even if it was your music or anybody else's music. But number 7. And the interesting thing is he played the Art Blakey thing when he got the Grammy, but this is 1985. This is a year later. But you will hear that Mulgrew's piano playing is starting to solidify to become that voice that everybody started to respect as the Mulgrew Miller, piano voice. And Mulgrew said one thing to me. He said he played with everybody he ever wanted to play with throughout his life, his career, except for Sarah Vaughan. And said, that they had plans to do it, and of course, Sarah died. But he said that the other thing that he was very, very adamant about, if you ever wanted to make Mulgrew mad, and then I thought about what Wallace was saying, Mulgrew would not play an electronic piano. Didn't enjoy it at all. He says, man, I just can't do it. And his idol was Oscar Peterson. Oscar Peterson recorded on an electronic piano. Herbie Hancock recorded on electronic piano. Mulgrew never would do it. He just said, man, I got to have a real piano. And probably because Harrison probably beat him on the fingers. This is number 7. And he can play a little bit of it. And this is it. And it's called Brooklyn at Dawn. And at this time, he was living in New York with Bill Fielder and some others, and they gave him a solo spot on this recording. And so it was Mulgrew's, just this tender piano voice, so simplistic. He was just 30 years old at this point, too. And was respected by guys, so much older than him. Brooklyn at Dawn. I told him I'll get that back.
Good afternoon. I'm Angeline Wardell. I'm a member of the Greater Turns Chapel AME Church, and Miller was our musician there. For years, he was our musician. He was so quiet, so nice, and so humble, and he would just sit there while the ladies would figure out what they were going to sing. And he would just sit there, and every once in a while, he'll look over and say, you ready to do your solo? I said, no. I said, I'm scared, I just can't do a solo. But the last time he visited, I invited him up to the choir stand, and the music was so beautiful. he was on the organ, and it sounded like a whole bunch of things going on. He was that good. And it's a privilege to be here today. And I just want to say thank you for doing this for Greenwood. And to the gentleman back there that mentioned a statue, let me know. And I will do the talking for you. And I know Miller is looking down and he's listening. I just want to tell him that I know 2 solos now.
Thank you.
Good evening. Again, I would like to thank you for having done this for Mulgrew Miller. My comments will be just like Mulgrew Miller's piano lessons. They would be very short. Mulgrew was a perfectionist when it came to his piano lessons. They usually last about 30 minutes. Mulgrew would come in and he would get through in about 5 or 10 minutes. And I would just have to say, play that again to try to stretch the time. And he could take pieces like Bach's 2-part inventions and sonatinas and sonatas by Beethoven, and he was just very skillful in doing that. The greatest thing that I can say about Mulgrew Miller is that he has not forgotten his roots. Every time he would come home, he would make an opportunity. He would always come visit us and talk to my wife and my family. And he would always express his appreciation. And I would say, for what, Mulgrew Miller? I didn't do that much for you. He was just so talented, as you can see in the bulletin. You didn't have to do much to make him succeed. He was just naturally born with music in his bones. And again, thank you so very much. I would like to say this to all of you, especially the educators. There are so many important people in Greenwood that we don't hear about. I was amazed when I put Mulgrew Miller on the bulletin board during the Black History Month, and many of the students didn't know who he was. So may I challenge all of you next year to please include him in your studies and programs for the Black History programs. He is quite deserving. And just like this gentleman said, in some of the readings, that people here in Greenwood don't realize how important and how famous he is, that is. And of course, he still is, because his music will never die. Thank you so much.
My name is Barbara Gray. I came to tell you all the other part of the office, and that's about our friend. Mother was a classmate of mine, and if some of the classmates are here, if you stand, please. And we always try, anytime there's something about Mulgrew, we go represent. Because he was so important to us as just making us look so good. When we would have our class reunions, he was so grounded. People, I can't even hardly speak it. He was so grounded and so proud of being your friend, even if you wasn't as popular as he was. He would always make our class reunions. Oh, class reunions in Greenwood. He would, if he was in Russia, Japan, whatever, he would like, let me know the date. He would map it to come back to where we were, just for like 2 days. And this is all we would do because we had like real outspoken girls in our class. It was like, come on, Mulgrew, come on, Mulgrew. You know, come on, come on. And he would never show out. Like I'm sure, like one time we had our 25th class reunion on the coast. And he came down and out on the terrace. I know people knew him because we was getting this little crowd that would follow us. You know, but he did not dare try to stand out from us. You know, and that made us look so good. I mean, everywhere we go, he would always act like he was one of us. You know, we knew that people knew it because, you know, people would just be looking and kind of, you know, gesturing, but he never did. He would never get on the piano and just go, 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 so they would know it. He always just did what us little people did. And that was so very important. And when I was coming in, there was a Greenwood book on the shelf that was in display, and I just want to mention this because it's so important to me, and it just touched me so. It was our 16th class reunion, I think. We did Sweet 16. We always did something a little different. And we did Sweet 16, and he came back. And we went out to Cottonlander. You know, and Chris may remember this picture. We was like, okay, we would just look like a bunch of people taking pictures. And we said, no, we got to put Mulgrew out there because he's going to make us stand out. So we made Mulgrew sit in the chair. He really didn't want to do it. We made him sit in the chair and we formed like a semicircle around him to let him be our shining star. Because he made us look so good. And he always did that. When you were talking about he would take someone else and he would kind of add to it to make it look better, he did that all the time. Even with your friendship, even with just meeting him. I think he kind of like, I could sum it up this way and sit down. We all, when we were young, were searching for ourselves. Mulgrew didn't have to. That's how come he just steadily tried to make it better. He already knew where he was going. So, but what made it good is he brought you with him. He brought you with him to know that his journey is nothing if nobody he has touched along the way. And he did. Thank you so very much.
This is a little bit of Woody Shaw. Mr. Harrison was talking about, we were on the education part of things, and when Mulgrew went up to Memphis State, he got in with some great piano players up there. There was James Williams, Donald Brown, and also playing Harold Mayburn, and in the Memphis area was Phineas Newburn. And they would all go out and they would listen to Phineas, but these piano players developed just a lifelong love for each other. You see some of the CDs up here. There's one CD, the Contemporary Piano Ensemble, which was 4 piano players: James Williams, Mulgrew, Donald Brown, and Jeffrey Keyser, I believe. And incredible music. 4 piano players able to play together and not get in the way of each other. Pretty impressive stuff. And here in a minute, I'm going to play a little bit of Donald Brown talking about Mulgrew.
I just wanted to say, you know, I had to get up twice. You know, this wouldn't be a good part if I didn't get up 2 times. I I just want to ask the Great Eternal Chapel AME Church, along with our pastor. I would like you all to raise your hand or stand. Okay, and there's the pastor over there on the stairs.
Y'all probably know who this is.
Hello. Thank you for having this tribute, and thank you all for coming. I recognize most of you. And of course, we're still a little emotional about Mulgrew's passing, but I'll give you just a little perspective from an older sister to a kid brother. Mulgrew started playing the piano probably 7 or 8 years old. He would hear songs at church. Mr. Harrison was the pianist at that time, and then he would come home and play on our piano the songs he'd heard at church. I mean, we were amazed that he could do that because we couldn't. And of course, he got better and better, and he practiced a lot, as Mr. Harrison stated, when he came for his music lessons. I remember Mr. Harrison used to come and give his music lessons, and he practiced a lot. And I can remember telling him the piano was in one room, and the TV was in the next adjoining room. And I remember to say to him, "Mother, stop that noise, stop that noise." He was trying to listen to TV. And of course, had I known then what I know now, I would have been more tolerant of us practicing. I am proud of his accomplishments. And I've heard more and more since his passing all the good things about him. And he's right, it's all good things. There have been other tributes. His wife showed us a picture of a church in the area where they lived. They installed a stained glass window in his honor. And it's a beautiful window. And of course, if you were to erect a statue, I understand that would be asking a lot, but to me, even with his accomplishments and accolades, to me, he's still just my kid brother. So, thanks again for the tribute, and thank you all for coming out. We appreciate it. The family appreciates it. Thank you.
I'm going to play a little bit of Donald Brown. And this recording was on the telephone. It was one of those stormy days, so you may not be too clear, but hope you can understand. And Donald's talking about Memphis State and the early days with Mulgrew up there.
It's a great time to be there with James. He's playing around this, all the kind of energy and spirit to the place. And so, yeah, I was excited, having them there. And it was kind of interesting because the band director at the time at Mississippi State, he was a really good jazz pianist and chef, and he asked me, he said, this kid coming from Greenwood, Mississippi, piano player, and he asked me what I should, sing. And when I took out this start with Mulgrew, the band, and they had, he put some years later, he told me, he said, Brian, he said, you don't remember the day that he showed me around Memphis? He said, we went to this place for ranch house. He gets our leaders, he said, you still a lip sync on me. And I just told him about, I can't remember it, and then I made it go right before that. I said, I probably still been lip sync on you on purpose, because I knew you were going to be a lot of problems for me. And so, we kind of had a good laugh out of that, but, yeah, we like I said, spend a lot of time, away from the bandstand as well as just playing together, duos, trios, and jazz. Was that? Yeah, we were just kind of the next generation of the Phineas and Harold Maven, and there was another pianist, Charles Thomas, who was kind of a mentor for Harold Maven, and James and Mulgrew had to go here, Phineas. Occasionally Harold would come to town, and the other guys, Charles Thomas was always performing, so we'd go hear him play a lot as well. Definitely treat to it, but I think besides the fact that we're all, great friends, but we had a lot of the same influences, whether it was Phineas, Mark, Chicken Real, so, we kind of the same sound colors, and then having the little section kind of made it easier with Chris and Tony Reeves, and so it's kind of first like a small, maybe a satchel quartet, if you want to think of it in one way, that we all had parts to play on some of the melodies and stuff, and then there was
you could understand all Donald was saying there, but when Mulgrew went up to Memphis State, the band director asked Donald if he would take him around, show him Memphis, and Donald took him out to lunch and spilled a milkshake on him. And Mulgrew brought that up later, and then Donald said, "Yeah, I knew you were going to be trouble for me, so that's why I spilled a milkshake on him." But and then the last thing he was talking about there was Donald did a record, I think it was in 2012, and Donald Brown had been having some arthritis problems, wasn't really confident in his playing, and Mulgrew showed up in the studio one day and just was so encouraging to him and made him feel great about what he was doing, and it turned out to be a great record. There's a video online that Donald actually kept on a little album promo of Mulgrew and him in the studio that day, and you might check that out sometime if you have a chance on YouTube. Donald Brown is still an educator at University of Tennessee in Knoxville. Has been there for many years, and Mulgrew became an educator at William Patterson University in New Jersey, which he was, from everything I've heard from his colleague David Dempsey up there, he put the same passion into teaching as he did into playing. Although I also heard from Alfonso that he didn't want students to be able to just say that they were studying with Mulgrew and then kind of slide through. He wanted to make sure that they did their work too. So that was the kind of caring person that he was. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the great trombone player Steve Toure, but Mulgrew played with Steve Toure on many albums, and I'm going to play a little bit of one of Steve's albums now, and then let you hear Steve giving a little tribute to Mulgrew also. sometimes when I'm listening to Mulgrew, I think I can hear like a lot of his influences, like in the same solo. I can hear Oscar Peterson, I can hear McCoy Tyner, I can hear Herbie Hancock in the same solo, but it's Mulgrew, but it's Mulgrew's spin on the whole thing. And that's kind of what I'm hearing in some of Steve's stuff. One of the other things that Steve told me about Mulgrew was that, well, and Mr. Harrison, I think, talked about this too, and Alfonso about it. He didn't like playing, he loved the acoustic piano. But there was this one record that Steve Toure was doing with another trombone player, Robin Eubanks. And on this album, he did want some electronics. So Mulgrew was very accommodating and actually played a synthesizer for, I think, the only time in his recording history. Here's a little bit of Steve Toure talking about Mulgrew.
Yeah, he's a young kid coming up and all that, but he already was right in the right feeling, and he stayed there. He was searching, but searching within the feeling, not being in and out in terms of getting it. He always got it from the beginning, and that's because of the way he was raised. You know, he came up through the church and blues and R&B, and he even had a Fender Rhodes piano. I mean, he played it on a couple of gigs with me. I'm a little older than Mulgrew. And then when he joined Woody's band, I realized how ridiculous he was. You know, he did stuff that was incredibly difficult, but he made it look so easy that if you were looking at it through rock and roll lines, like in show business, because rock and roll, they play stuff that ain't that hard, but they make it look real, like a big effort, and everybody trips because they're making faces and all that. But Mulgrew would play the hardest stuff and make it look so easy, and unless you really know music, you might not realize how incredibly gifted he was.
That's true. You seem to have I'm sorry.
To me, that's a sign of a true master. You know, there's a lineage of piano players, you know, within our music. You know, it's a whole lineage. And he's definitely the last real innovator for me. I haven't heard any real innovator. I heard guys trying to do hip-hop and combine that and innovative, but I'm not buying it because hip-hop is watered down R&B in a big sense, except they're using electronic drums a lot of the time and all that. And it's not as funky as James Brown. But, and Mulgrew did all that, but he took it way further than that. And, you know, he's a true grandmaster. But all the elders and the lineage, Cedar and Hayden Jones, Irby and Jen, all those guys, they loved McCoy. They were all aware of him and loved him. He was the real deal. It wasn't about just trying to be different. What you do is you learn how to really play and then be yourself. We're all naturally different. It's hard to be yourself because that means you got to be honest. Mulgrew wasn't doing it just to be famous and get his name in a magazine, and so he could be a star and make money and all that shit. He was doing it because he loved the music. Whatever you are in your heart, that's what comes out of the music. Yeah, Mulgrew was one of the warmest, gentle soul, you know, very encouraging and what's the word? He nurtured people, you know, he wasn't mean spirited at all. He was the opposite of that. Well, yeah, well, special, but it's musical. I know this. We both were with Woody Shaw during a very formative period in our musical lives. And I know I found my own voice during that period. And I kind of feel like Mulgrew did too. And I know this, because we kind of grew up, matured, so to speak, musically during that period with Woody Shaw. And we played a lot of difficult, challenging